Graduates from welcome. We realized we had a ton of graduates from the Doctor of Spiritual Science program of PTS, and they have an incredible amount of wisdom and accumulated knowledge, experience, and we wanted to have a way to let them share what they gained from graduating from this program. And so before we go further, and before I introduce our wonderful guest, I wanted to invite you to join me in coming into a form of resonance, coming into a oneness, an invocation, tuning into that which is the highest with each of us, and as a group together today. And so we will do something we call calling in the light in the movement of spiritual inner awareness and Peace Theological Seminary. And we will have the chanting of three Anihus at the end, Anihu, just an attunement to a higher power or spiritual essence. So with that, just invite you to touch into your hearts. And beloved Father, Mother God, just now we ask to come before you in our loving hearts, bringing forward our curiosity and our sweet, innocent, loving natures. We ask to be filled, surrounded, protected with the light of the Holy Spirit, the light of the Christ, the mystical traveler. We ask that the blessings of this extend to each one of us here today, and for all those that may review the recording of this gathering in the future. We see a bright light of wisdom, of knowledge, of upliftment, of the traveler's teachings through all time, connecting all of us and connecting all those souls that are hungry for the light and the love of upliftment. We ask a special blessing for our guest today, Dr. Lawrence Brock, and for all those who are sharing with us as presenters in this Being a Spiritual Scientist platform, for all those who are joining us to view it. We give thanks. So be it.
So be it.
And
You. I. You.
so you might ask, what is it to become a graduate of the Doctor of Spiritual Scientist program that's offered by PTS? And it really consists of quite a few different steps. And it starts with something that is usually a 2-year process, which is that of becoming an initiate in the movement of spiritual inner awareness, a sound current initiate, and a minister in the movement of spiritual inner awareness. So that's the first thing. And there's usually about a 2-year wait for that. Then there becomes the opportunity to take something called the Master of Spiritual Science program, which is a minimum 2-year period program. And it focuses on creating grace. And you might think, well, that's enough. If I've created grace, wouldn't that, just set me up pretty well. Yes, I think it does. And the opportunity that was created after the Masters of Spiritual Science, or MSS, is the Doctor of Spiritual Science program, which is a minimum 3-year program. In addition to being initiates and ministers, those who take the program are tithers. So they tithe, which is a form of aligning with the greater abundance field. And they do hundreds of hours of classwork, written work, reading. They come up with their own approach to spiritual science that's individually, uniquely theirs, and which is repeatable and can be shared with others. Very experiential, very grounded in a way, even though it's spiritual. And then they have the opportunity to graduate by writing a 50 to 100 page practical treatise. And this practical treatise is unique to the person who does it, and yet needs to hit certain landmarks to be approved and to cause them to graduate. And our guest today can speak to what that experience might be to actually be in graduation day from the program. And so I want to I want us to really hold the beautiful space for Reverend Dr. Lawrence Brock. And he is an ordained minister. He's a certified polarity therapist. He's a fully accredited advanced biofeedback practitioner. And in 1976, which that was a little while back, following a life-threatening car accident, Lawrence had a profound near-death experience that permanently transformed his understanding of life, of healing, and of consciousness. And during this experience, he encountered a loving, all-knowing divine presence and awakened with a deeper inner knowing that everything is ultimately good and all right. And he emerged from the experience with heightened intuitive and healing abilities and a clear calling to explore the spiritual realms and support others on their own paths of awakening and healing. So for more than 40 years, Dr. Brock has maintained a successful practice as a spiritual counselor, energy healer, and a spiritual intuitive. His work blends grounded practicality with deep spiritual insight, supporting healing that helps align soul purpose, clears energetic blocks and negativity, restores inner harmony. He often works in collaboration with what he will tell us about his spirit crew. And this is a loving group of spiritual guides, masters, and angels devoted to healing, clarity, and the highest good. He has studied from teachers with multiple spiritual and mystical traditions and has further refined his approach to healing and inner listening. Dr. Brock is also the author of 3 books, including the #1 Amazon bestseller, Autobiography of a Healer, Near-Death Experience to the Power of Love. He also wrote An Air of Well-Being, the L Breathing Method, and he wrote Near-Death Experience to Heaven on Earth, Tools for Living in Your Divinity. So this is a work that continues to focus on helping people embody spiritual truth in everyday life. So with that, Dr. Brock, welcome today to being a spiritual scientist.
Thank you. That's a lot of stuff. I'm always like, uh, so first of all, just this past week was the 34th anniversary of my ordination, which is a big thing for me. So I'm really proud of that. Guess where I'm going to start is so it took me a long time to graduate because it took me many years to write my paper. And when I finally did, the process, I really enjoyed it. It didn't seem like that big of a deal. And I was at one of my friends who's I live in New Jersey, another minister in the area. And I told him, and he took out his wallet to give me $50 when I told him I graduated. I said, I don't want your money. He said, why? You did something really big. And that was when I realized all the years of sitting there writing, it was a big thing. So I actually took the $50 and it meant a lot to me. Um, so yeah, part of my process was it shortly after I finished the schooling for the DSS. So I think I did 6 years of the program, right? So, and then shortly after that, my daughter was born, and a big focus of my life was taking care of her, and still is. She's about to graduate undergraduate school this in May. And I had some ideas about what I wanted to write about, and I really there something in the instructions about something you should be passionate about. I'd write for something about something for a few months. I dedicated one day a week. I would do that, and then I would lose my enthusiasm. And so some years later, I realized I just needed to get past that. And part of the story was after fourth grade, my daughter's teacher told me she should learn to type with all her fingers, and she still doesn't. But I thought I got excited about that. So I got an app on my Chromebook hoping to inspire her. And I sat down every day and I learned how to type because I was typing with two fingers. And after the summer, she only did it a couple of times. And like I said, she types with, she doesn't use her pinkies. So however but she's very fast. After the summer of sitting down every day and typing, I realized, wow, I like this. So was used to getting up, making coffee, and sitting down at my Chromebook. And oh, this is just like journaling. So I started journaling. Then this is just like journaling in the DSS to write my paper. So I started doing that, and it took close to 3 years for me to finish. I took the research part of it very seriously. Like I really, like mentioned, the grounded part. My technique is very grounded. Um, I also, part of the instructions where it said to look at your life and see what works for you. I knew they were talking about looking at your life right then, but I decided to look at my whole life and just see the path. And part of it was my dad was, I loved him, and he was just not, he was a Marine sergeant, I mean, for a few years, and that really uh, expresses his personality. But something kind of happened. I told him I was working on it, and when I told him, he didn't say anything. But one day I was in a meeting at my daughter's school when she was in middle school, and he called me, which was so unusual. First of all, I even left the meeting because there wasn't such a good signal. And he said, I'm really interested in what you're writing your paper about. I'd love to hear about it. And I literally to myself thought, like, who is this man? You know what I mean? But so I took it as a very personal journey, basically, and it was really good. And I remember part of the schooling was you have to make your whole life the school, and that's kind of how we live. That's being a minister and being an initiate and a student of the traveler. That's what it's like. And so it was. So part of my process also was I really just realized I need to choose something and write about it and forget about the being enthusiastic about it. Um, One time I shared with JR that I was having trouble finding the if this, then this statement for my paper. And he rightly so said, because you're not really tracking. Of course, he knew I'm very competitive. So if I'm tracking how much exercise, I exercise more. If I track how much SEs, I do more. So it wasn't a really good barometer of, to find out if this, then this. I did find that if I tracked, took a lot better care of myself. So, but it was interesting. So I just thought one time, I'm just going to do the easiest thing I could think of. I'll choose a simple breathing exercise and write about that. And I thought I was kind of scamming the system a bit. And then, of course, when I went, so this was like 10 years after I actually finished the schooling. When I went back and checked my notes, at least once a month in there, it said, the most important way I take care of myself is through conscious breathing. So something in me, in spite of my kind of quirky personality, was really getting it. And um, so I've been fortunate to be able to work sometimes with some really great athletes uh, for a number of years. While I was developing the breathing exercise, I was part of a tennis clinic. I have a friend who used to be a professional tennis player, and he was good enough. I mean, if you were a really big tennis fan in his day, you would have heard of him, but partially he was always good friends with John McEnroe growing up, and so that's something that. But he was in the top 40 in the world, which means he made millions of dollars. And but he had a tennis clinic, so some of the top college and starting out professional tennis players would come there, and I got to work with them. And it was just around during that time. So I had always done a breathing thing with my clients, and this for my paper, I had to define it. Also for these athletes, it was really good to have something specific to work with them about. And even the way I call it L breathing, which is LB, my initials, but the way that that came out was the guy who was the trainer at the time. He knew I liked Hispanic stuff, music, and culture and stuff. So he would he had a nickname for me, L Train, like EL Train, because he knew in a meet when we had a meeting, if I got something in my mind, I did not let go of it. And he said, I'm like a train. So it kind of became a funny thing because I was always asking people, are you doing the breathing? And he started saying L breathing, EL. And then it was like when I wrote my paper, I go, oh, I could call this L breathing with my initials in it. So it's really part of me. So um, Peter suggested, rightly so, that I talk a bit about parenting because it's been such a big part of my ministry. And um, so my daughter, she's 21 and she's about to graduate college, she came with me to set up for John or JR's and John or JR or John's seminar to because I would always help set up for sound and stuff since she was 1 years old. She would come with me. I'd bring her in a stroller. Sometimes when she was too little, there'd be people there to watch her. And now she is an amazing sound person herself and audio video stuff. And she actually worked at a local comedy club with all the tech guys are men. She was 19. All the tech guys are 25 at the youngest, and the owner chose her to be the head sound person. It was pretty cool. So, but I do really love my daughter, and when I talk about spiritual experiences, to me, the the love that how Jesus loves us, how JR, the traveler, how God loves us, the closest thing on the physical level is how much I love my daughter. And it's really nice because she's been really appreciating the things I've done for her. One is I really encouraged her to go to the college she's going to, and she, in some ways, blindly just believed me. And now she's really happy about it. And and so she would interview people. She's interviewed some pretty famous people and local politicians and stuff. And I think she was maybe in ninth grade, she interviewed the superintendent of schools and did a really good job. And I posted it on Facebook. Someone made a comment on there, Sophia, this is amazing. We need more women like you in the world. And then he said, I should know I own a production company. And my daughter reached out to him, and it ended up he owned a pretty nice production company. I just kind of assumed, oh, it's just this local guy who doesn't. But, and so they connected. My daughter worked for him a little bit. And about a week ago, he reached out to her, like they've stayed connected on LinkedIn, so they kind of know what's going on with each other. But he reached out to her saying, I'd like to discuss what your next steps are going to be. With hearing that, my daughter was so excited and so happy that someone might be reaching out to offer her a job. And then she was thankful to me because she knew my And when she first went to college, she said she was a little nervous because something. She said, I'm a little nervous because so many of the good things I did is because you're a pain in my butt. And I assured her I was going to continue to be a pain in the butt. Okay. So if anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to do that. Ask any questions. So,
I have a question, which
okay,
is
yes.
yes, which is what is the title or the name of your practical treatise?
It is an air of well-being, the L breathing technique. It's a
And
great read.
I wonder, did you have a repeatability study or service study as part of it?
Yeah, yeah, yep. I did the whole thing. Yes. I
And can
also
you
did
tell
both.
us just
Yeah.
kind of anecdotally how that went for folks?
It's really quite a remarkable technique, and all the people who followed it had great results. There was one woman that pops into my mind who had a lot of problems with her menstrual cycle, and it got much better. Uh, there's so many things. It's a very simple technique that really changes so much. Um, like I said, I did a lot of research, and some of the research showed the way that it gets you to breathe with a little practice is a more when most people are kids, that's how they breathe. And so the study showed in kindergarten 85% of the kids would breathe this way, and part of it is abdominal breathing with a little motion in your spine. And then by fifth grade it switched to where only 15% are breathing that way. And with this practice, I mean, emotionally and physically, I mean, it's really quite miraculous. And you know, yeah, one of the tennis players did it. He was an interesting uh, story just because when he was in high school, he was considered one of the best. He was considered the best high school tennis player in the world, and he didn't think it was such a big deal because he wasn't the best in the world, and so he got a lot out of it because he was his dad, like my dad, a very tough guy on him and everything. Um, I mean, it seems to get rid of pain in the body. I know a few months ago I was having some problems with my shoulder, and I realized I was not doing my practicing my L breathing every day. So I did, but after even really within a moment, it starts to change things. It's really great. So, um,
So, is this something you might be willing to share as an experience with the folks on the call today?
yeah, definitely. The beginning part is pretty simple, so we can do that right now. So the breathing in this is abdominal breathing, and most people do not breathe that way. So our lungs are shaped kind of like a triangle, and by just breathing into our chest, we're getting much less oxygen into our body. Okay, and the studies I show said we get about a third as much oxygen as opposed to abdominal breathing. So we're not really breathing into our abdomen, we're just breathing into the bottom of our lungs. Okay. And the first step of it is you put a hand on your chest and you put a hand on your belly and just breathe and see which hand moves. And if your shoulders are moving, that is you're not doing it. That's one indication too, because a lot of people try to use their shoulders to breathe deeper. So to get yourself to breathe into your belly, you kind of fake it till you make it kind of thing, where you breathe in and stick your belly out at the same time. And after a little while, they'll click in together. For this, you do not need to do anything about your breathing through your nose and your mouth at this point. So I taught a lot of workshops in this. I would say maybe 1 out of 50 people naturally breathe into their abdomen. And I mean, if you've done some breathing work, you might have shifted it already. So for most people, practicing like the way of forcing, like it is breathing in and sticking your belly out, usually within a few breaths, it'll click in. For some people, it takes practice a few days in a row to get that. Okay. So for this, you do want to breathe in through your nose and mouth. Again, studies show that you get obviously a lot more air in. Some people are adverse to doing that because of there's certain breathing techniques and schools of thought that say you should only breathe through your nose. But most people don't really get enough oxygen. And as I said, when I was a lot of my years of developing this, I was working with athletes. So for them, breathing just through their nose was not nearly enough. So, but it is the way you do the breathing is you leave your mouth open a little bit and then you focus on breathing in through your nose. And then you'll see that you're breathing in through your nose and mouth.
And thanks to the folks that are on camera, because this is really wonderful to be able to tune into what other folks are doing.
Okay, so this is so for my study, we had to do 10 weeks, which I don't know if that's currently what it is, but about that amount of time it takes of practicing this every day for just a few minutes. It will change how you breathe. It will start to get you breathing like this naturally. There's actually a study I found that said one of the ways we burn, it helps burn more fat because people are as well, if I breathe into my belly, I'm going to be fatter. But no, just the opposite is true because there's more oxygen, your body can burn more fat. Okay? So the other part of this is to get your spine moving. And when you first do it, it's a little overdone because you want to start it to do. And sometimes I'll overdo it. Like when my shoulder was hurting, I would first do that. But you want part of it is you breathe in through your into your belly and you just let your spine arch a little tiny bit.
So would I notice my hips moving at all with that?
Yes, your hips will move. Yes, your hips will move, your head will move. Yes. So you can, if you're sitting, you can almost, it helps a little. You tilt your pelvis forward a little bit as you're breathing in and letting your spine go like that. And then you just add in a little movement of your head. Again, once you really do this, like I can do this anywhere, and it's not like I'm looking, people aren't noticing it. It just starts to become a subtle movement in your spine. So it helps move the spinal fluid through your spine. It helps your nervous system. It helps so many things. So Martha Ringer was my advisor for writing my paper. And one of my other little stories was for years, people were telling me to read this book, Conscious Breathing, by this guy, Gay Henderson, Hendricks. And it always annoys me when I do something and people say it's like something else because I want it to be uniquely mine. But I decided to read the book while writing my paper, and I saw like it was so similar to what I was doing. I mean, and I only read it because I didn't consider myself such a good writer back then, and I was looking for ways to express it. But he definitely says only breathe through your nose, and the movement of the head is a little different, but the whole other part is the same. And Martha happened to, I don't know if she still lives there, but she lived right across the street from him and met him and did some breathing sessions with him. And, at one point I said to her, wow, that must have been so cool. And she said, no, the way you do it differently is so much better. That was really nice to hear. Um, so yes, the book, I brought my book here. So this is the book that I wrote about the breathing exercise. It has the same name as my treatise, An Air of Well-Being. And there's also a video on my YouTube channel. that shows you how to do this. But if you could just practice in a little bit every day for it does take about 3 months, but it will change how you're breathing. And my quote is turn your body into a healing machine. It really is a phenomenal thing. And I forget it sometimes. The cool thing is I catch myself breathing the right way all the time. So it's unusual if I'm checking. So the person who wrote that book was a student of Moshe Feldenkrais, who is possibly the worst writer I ever read. And he has a lot of really good ideas and stuff, but his books are, I've read some of his books. It is so hard to read. But that guy who wrote that breathing book was a student of his. So a lot of that work comes from Feldenkrais and the breathing that they do there.
Well, we've got a question from Corinne.
Okay.
Actually, it's not a question, Lawrence. It's more of a experience, sharing what I experienced when I started doing the breathing and then rocking forward a bit. I
Yeah,
just a lot of emotion came up. There was no thoughts that went with it, but just like clearing and kind of a sobbing thing. So that was I just wanted to share that. It
that's
was
great.
pretty
Yeah, your
cool.
energy
Yeah,
is just really moving there. That's really cool.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is. It's such a simple thing, and it is really quite profound. I'm glad to be doing this because I do it all the time and I forget how cool it really is but I mentioned it with my shoulder, so I don't really practice it each day like I used to because I feel like I'm normally doing it. But when I have pains in my body, it's good to do the kind of over version of it where I'm really arching my spine like this instead of more subtly. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, Lawrence.
Okay, I have to think of what else to talk about here. So,
Hi, Lawrence. Can you hear me?
hi. Yes.
Hi, I'm Gregory.
Hi, Gregory.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I see, like me, that you're not only a member of the Hair Club for Men, but you're a co-president. I I'm a
It's funny. One of my interviews I did, they had some hair growing product advertisement at the beginning. Of course,
that's
people were making all sorts of comments about it.
yeah. The placement of ads is often amusing. Um, I
Well, it was a good placement. It got a lot of attention, that's for
That's
sure.
fun. My dad grew up in Patterson and then
Uh-huh.
later lived in Fort Lee.
Those are in New Jersey. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's about an hour north of me, those
gotcha,
places.
gotcha. So I'm a DSS Year 5 student. I'm in the completing, I'm preparing some minor revisions of my round 3 practical
That's
treatise.
great.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really grateful. It's been a beautiful process. So nourishing on every level. And thank you, Aspen. I just saw a heart. Um, yeah, it's really been extraordinary. Get very full appreciating the transformation that I've experienced in the course of the journey, in the course of more wholeheartedly. I've been around for a while, but to have a structured um, context to support getting really anchored in being a spiritual scientist.
Yeah,
I have one observation about the breathing, and I'm guessing that most of the folks here are in one way or another participating in MSIA experiences and perhaps practicing SEs. One of the things I really appreciate about the breathing that your introduction reminded me of as we did this mini practice um, is when I do SEs, I've done martial arts over the years and I've done different some measure of breath work
yeah,
workshop. What I'm familiar with and what feels like part of my own process relative to consciousness, like JR says, peace is the cessation of againstness, and we're ongoing doing clearing work from with different techniques and strategies and
yeah,
so on. Part of the way that I relate to it is becoming an increasingly hospitable host to all of my parts.
yeah.
Um, And in the process of becoming a hospitable host, one of the things that that includes is the regulation of my nervous system, the clearing of the every forgiveness releases a little of whatever that is that might contribute to my nervous system being out of balance
Yeah.
or dysregulated. And that, but it seems to me, based on my own experience during SEs, and I mention it as an anchoring, but also in perhaps it might be a valuable practical application reference point for folks, is that there's a world of difference for me when I'm breathing from my belly during SEs
Yeah.
versus when I might be in my, even I was going to say breathing here, but really what I was almost said was when I'm in my head, because if when I'm in my head and getting identified with or buying into stuff going on, in this level, ego level, ideation and so on, and perhaps emotionally stirred by it,
Yeah.
I'm more tempted to be up here. So
Yeah.
it's just a affirmation of the beauty of the invitation to go deeper, more centered, more fully into Rumi's field by
Yeah.
consciously choosing how we're going to breathe. It seems like an introduction to easy access to more of the
Yeah,
field.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're part of it is when we're breathing up here, our system's in fight or flight mode. So, and when we're breathing here, it's in, it's in sympathetic mode and then parasympathetic mode. So, right, and actually part of what I had people do in the study is do journal writing, and just that process of going from, breathing however you're breathing when you think of something that disturbs you to breathing the right way, that was the indicator. Similar to how we would use CKT, this was a way the breathing was a little more direct physical way to do that. So yeah, it's so true. And
Beautiful.
it's mind-blowing how simple it is. And some people, they say, oh, I know how to breathe. And you look at them, they don't really know how to breathe, which seems kind of funny. So,
And my sense, like as you describe it, my sense of it is, I don't know that this is the function of it, but there's something of different techniques, but with the breathing as you described, there's something about allowing for the stuff to show up, but allowing it to show up while consciously breathing
yeah,
is an invitation to let go of whatever those gripping identifications or misidentifications and associations are, so that no, it's in this much softer field where that can be cleared.
yeah, yeah. That's great. I mean, a lot of I mean, there are so many studies about this, partially because of mindfulness techniques, so most people think of breathing right away with mindfulness, but a lot of it is, uh, I mean, there's just some cool studies. Yeah, so in the book, there's all the details about the studies and stuff, but there was one where they would actually show pictures of these horrifying things, and then there were in that study there were three groups. One had a thing that did nothing, one that practiced breathing, and one I don't remember the details of it, but it was kind of cool to see. Uh, and they would take their pulse and stuff like that. So there's studies that really show how physiologically our body just does so much better with the breathing. It's great.
Beautiful. If it's okay, I know I want to give everybody plenty of room. I have a quick question I'd
Sure.
be curious about, which is, um, I know for me, and you touched on it, you kind of opened the door of my curiosity of your
Yeah.
thoughts on it, was I know for me tracking has been has been both literally from a practical perspective life-changing,
Yeah.
like the degree of tracking, and the specifics being tracked, but also metaphorically, like having eyes on my choices moment to moment,
Yeah.
how I'm almost, not almost, very much like a reparenting process for me
Yeah.
of knowing that there's conscious, loving care and attention being paid to the moment to moment choices, and then
Yeah.
actually simultaneously harvesting the learnings and the opportunities and the blessings and celebrating them. So I wonder if there's anything relative to this being the spiritual scientist, you know, showcase.
Yeah. Well,
If there's anything around either tracking or other aspects of being a spiritual scientist that are meaningful to you, and perhaps why.
I am a very dedicated do journaling, that's for sure. So yeah, I think it's good to keep track of things. I have in my journaling, there's a few things I always check to see where I'm at. And one is my sleeping, because when I was young, I didn't sleep nearly enough. And just by being conscious about it and gentle and loving with myself, I learned to sleep more, which is great as I'm older. So I have sleeping, my tendency to worry, which sometimes I do pretty good with. The other one is just to check how my body's doing, and so I don't really compare the information like I did when I was tracking in school, but I think bringing the consciousness into it, and I have found that the breathing and whatever's going on, if I can get into that place of being centered in my breath and then into my loving, that just helps everything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's great.
And
We've got Laura Kalsa.
Okay.
Hi, Lawrence.
Hi.
I think I've met you somewhere.
I think so too. Yeah,
Yeah, you seem
that's
familiar.
like, oh, I know that person. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing today. And Peter, thank you
Yeah.
for hosting today. I had a couple of things that I wanted to talk with you about.
Okay.
One, I think the one that's probably most gripping is that just a little bit about my background. I studied with Yogi Bhajan for 15 years.
Uh-huh.
So he taught us all these different breathing techniques from the Vedas.
Yeah.
And we practiced quite regularly every day, and it was very powerful. Um, and then I taught for 9 years, so I'm a big advocate of what
Oh,
you're talking
cool.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like simplicity. Like I've moved from Kundalini yoga to Yin yoga,
Uh-huh.
and I've moved from like intense, breath of fire to abdominal breathing. Like, I'm going much more effeminate to
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
in my life. And right now, I'm doing work with trauma clients, and I work as an equine therapist, and I
Uh-huh.
teach somatic breathing, somatic breath, and
Yeah.
things like that, and mindfulness with trauma clients with horses.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's very super cool. And there's a program you probably heard of called Heart Math.
I think I have heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, and they have been doing studies on the heartbeat of horses and
Oh, wow.
the heartbeat of
Yeah.
they have one of the largest hearts and they have one of the like most strongest vibrational, frequencies.
Yeah.
So when a person is coming up by a horse, their frequency shifts and their heartbeat changes.
Yeah.
And I'm very fascinated by all this because I think I mean, we kind of intuitively know
Yeah.
what we're doing, but we
Yeah.
also to show scientifically that these things really make a difference with what you were talking about, like with sleep and worry and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, the
Stress, right?
sleeping is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one thing that I just wanted to mention. And then the other one was just a little bit more curious about if you had a personal story that brought you to this.
I my personal story, yes, I did. I was a total jock when I was younger, and I had a few experiences that uh I mean, I probably was around 10 years old. I was a really good basketball player to the point I'd be in these rec leagues, and the parents would put like the worst players on my team and try to on one of the other teams put the next 10 best players and I would still win. But there was one of the games that was almost halftime, and instead of trying to score another basket, I started to dribble. My bench was on the other side of the court from where we're shooting, and I walked and just right at the half court, right here, I just took the ball. I took a breath and I knew the ball was going to go in, and it went in swish. I didn't even turn around, but I had a number. I was a really good high jumper, and some other things like that happened. Breathing. I used to actually go and shovel the basketball court outside in the winter. That's how much I wanted to play. And one time I was just going like this to warm my hands up, and it warmed the air coming into my lungs, and I felt such a difference. Little things like that.
Yeah,
Being a total jock
very
just
cool.
happened a bunch of times. Yeah.
And have you done any research on people that do like deep diving? That I forget what it's called, but it's when you go under the cold water and you hold your breath and
No, I haven't.
well,
I've
they're
seen
saying
it.
it changes the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, one of the studies I found, which is to me was in one way the only real study, was they would do MRIs before and after. So 8 weeks of mindfulness breathing became a thing because John Kabat-Zinn, who kind of brought mindfulness to corporate America, came up with 8 weeks. So a lot of the studies are done like that, but it basically showed the gray matter grew, but when the matter in our brain grows, it just becomes denser. But they took MRIs and there was a control group and everything, and it showed the changes in the brain from doing like 20 minutes of mindfulness breathing every day. Like that's like really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's just so many cool things.
Hmm.
Was never, I've always liked to take saunas and jump in the cold water, but I never was drawn towards, I've heard about that stuff. People say it might be like one of those things like book conscious breathing. One day when I look into it, I go, oh, this is so familiar, but I haven't so far.
When I was 20, I was very much involved in metaphysics. And
Yeah,
I just knew intuitively that the two things that were going to change a lot of things in the world and in us was sound and light. I just knew that, like
yeah,
just an understanding. And now they're coming up with all kinds of healing modalities with
yeah.
frequency and sound and the heartbeat of a horse. And I mean, it goes on and on.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. Yeah, when you say the horses, I say JR loved horses, so I don't
Yeah,
need to hear anything else but that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like I'm in. So
Yeah. Thank you
that's
so
cool.
much.
You're welcome. Yeah, one of the things that so I happen to run into all sorts of teachers, but there was this Hindi teacher, and she seemed to know I was going to study with her because she told me right away I was going to study the Bible, tarot reading, and the Bhagavad Gita with her. And she talked to me a lot about how the Holy Spirit is the breath of God. But that to me, that, the air is invisible. It's like you can imagine it is something that connects us to spirit so easily. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, hello. I'm so pleased to hear what you have to share. It's part of the answer of my prayer today, and I was saying, how can I love myself better?
Yeah.
And I'm in a beautiful phase in my life. I feel I'm starting anew.
Yeah.
Uh, it's as though I would say that 6 years of my life, I was kind of shut down, and things have
Yeah.
been happening that are causing me and inspiring me to wake up and to be open in a way that I haven't been before because I was a bit shut down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to hear you on breathing, which is like we breathe, that's
Yeah.
required. And I think that's just a wonderful thing to get more into, like you're
It
saying.
is. Yeah, it
It's
really
just
helps get
beautiful.
into, yeah, the different wisdom and the centers, connect to the basic self, connect to the Tantien in the physical strength in your pelvis there. That'll help you a lot.
So if the one thing, so this is the question. So my question for today is,
Yeah.
how do I learn to love myself better? What would be your sort of off the top of your head? What would you say?
journal writing.
Oh, journal writing. Oh, I do
So I have
write.
journal writing. I do one thing, what made me happy today? What qualities of mine do I really appreciate? Things like that. What good things? And you could write, can I love myself today? And
I was thinking about that. So
yeah.
it's on my list for
So yeah,
tomorrow.
one of my teachers would always say, it's not the answer, it's the question. So sometimes just proposing a question like that, or usually our mind's going around trying to look for what's wrong in the world, really. And if you start to question, like, how can I love myself today? And you start looking for that, it's
Mhm.
like setting an intention, but in a way where you want your mind to answer that question.
I do get that. And one of the things I like doing is I call them beautiful questions and I do it in a free form kind of a way.
Yeah,
So I think that's probably, and that's the idea that I have, but you kind of affirm for me that that could be a really helpful thing for me in the process of waking up
yeah,
to who I am. And my ordination blessing has the theme of awakening. So
yeah.
I think that's part of the process that I'm going through. But I'd like I am a writer. I mean, I do write
That's good. So yeah, we
that's
have our
enough.
centers. So, we have our high self, our conscious self, start to connect to the spirit in our heart, and our basic self's kind of located in the gut. And you want to line all those up together, work it. I mean, when I was in the DSS, we had the thing that's called the marriage, right? Between the basic self, high self, and conscious self. So part of it is where it's located in the body and just get all those parts working together. So, and
Try and
because
do
the
that
basic self
visually.
really responds to that self-love, and so that on the
Oh,
physical level, the energy level to do things, it really does a lot.
okay, I get that too. I'm doing the DSS TL, which is it's the first time they're doing it as a TL. So,
Uh-huh.
and we're I'd say a trainee. I mean, the students, the faculty are being the students as well, which is absolutely phenomenal. And I love this class. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, thank you. You've given me another a little something to be
What does
working.
TL mean?
Transcendent leadership.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Doctor of Spiritual Science in Transcendent Leadership. And so it's the transcendence, it's
Yeah,
bringing transcendent, what's above, into onto this level, and it's
there you go.
being, leading,
That's
doing, and
perfect.
so it's just exquisite. I totally love it. So, but this is really helpful. I appreciate very much what you've been sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anne. Super. So, that's a lot of input. Does that bring anything forward for you to share with us, Lawrence, about your process?
Um, yeah, just thinking of some of the things of trusting. One is part of the way one of my early experiences with breathing was I was taking this class at SUNY Purchase in New York, near where my parents lived, and there was a cute girl in the class who told me she was taking this yoga class, and so I went to check out the yoga class. The cute girl was never there, but I there was this yoga teacher actually from India, and she would, put tapestries and carpets down every week, and so that was I was 19, and I just really liked the breathing, and again being a total jock, it just really felt good in my body. So things like that just kept showing up in my face until I finally started listening a little bit. Cool. So,
Yeah, I wanted to uh, resonate with you about the breathing, and that
yeah,
I found value in what you just shared with us, and that I saw the responses folks had. And I had
yeah,
everybody on gallery, and you could just see, I could
it's
see
such an amazing thing. Yeah,
it's a shift, and that the thing I found was having the hands here.
yeah,
My belly was moving more than my chest. I was like, yeah.
cool.
And that tie between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic,
Yeah,
and to how to bring the restoration part of life more forward in the
yeah,
parasympathetic, which is what it seems, you evoke with the L breathing. And so I love that. I'm very curious about your spirit crew. I'm very curious about your near-death experience.
Okay, yeah.
I'm very curious about how you do your work with people because I know that that's informed by your PT experience. So anywhere you want to go with those.
Okay, yeah. So the spirit crew, it's a good example because things in the spirit, our our mind can really get in the way. So that's a way that I've discovered where I can be open to different beings in the spirit that come and work with me and have something for my mind, but not trying to pin it down. Uh, so I mean, there's a lot of times Archangel Gabriel and Archangel Uriel are there, but uh, my experience kind of with Jesus is he's like the CEO, so he doesn't personally show up all that much, but some underneath him, and but it's I don't know, for a while not that. So when I've worked with people, and I'd say until about a year ago, there was always, it seemed like the spiritual beings that would come were more about my client, and which is fine with me. That's really the purpose of it. But then I start to notice this very consistent energy. And see, as soon as I said it was very white in color, which it's not always, but I discovered it was Archangel Uriel that was coming very consistently, and it's more uh, like JR said, everything he says is a lie. That's what it's like. So it was for me, but to say that it's just not true because it's there to be of service. And there was just a certain consistency. And then so I started using the spirit crew as ways to kind of honor that the beings that were there and teaching me and being more a part of me than just for the client, I guess would be a way to say it. Um, so again, it's kind of a fun way to put it where it's not, there's a lot of people who say, oh, I'm working with the, like, I get interviewed quite a bit. A lot of times people are saying they're talking to Jesus, and I get very clearly inside, kind of in a funny way, you might be talking to Jesus, but Jesus is not talking to you. Because, we get to do really high work in MSIA, and not many people get to do that. So, um, but it's just like the greatest thing. Part of me just wants to close my eye and start to feel that energy. So it's, in one way, the energy comes in, and then it is almost like guessing what are the words to say and keep honoring that energy, making sure I'm feeling it and seeing the effect on everybody there. So, but everyone can just kind of take a breath because there's a lot of energy there right now that can come to each of you. And so it is a very white looking energy that I'm feeling, but it might be a little different for you. Okay. So I've been really blessed. Like sometimes I help people. It's like so cool. To me, I had something happen some years ago where I used to be almost ashamed of what I do, to tell you the truth, because people would talk, you'd mention it, people, and they would act like you're crazy. But it's not so much like that now. But I helped this woman who had a miscarriage, and she was very sick, and her friend kind of forced her to come see me because she didn't believe in what I did. And the doctor said, forget about ever having a baby. At this point, we're concerned about saving you. And when it was in person, I saw her in person, I knew I could help her. And after 2 sessions, she wrote me this email saying, I don't know what you do, but the doctors say I'm getting better. And then she ended up getting pregnant and having a son. And a few years later, it was around Thanksgiving, so I was looking through my emails of things to be grateful for, and I just realized how amazing that is. And something in me was able to look at it like I'm observing it from the outside and getting how cool it is. It's like, and what a blessing it is for me to be a part of that. So, and then my perspective about it is where I could look at it and just really laugh. And I keep saying it is so cool what I get to do, like that. So, but it's great. Yeah, not too long ago, I was kind of complaining to myself about not having a miracle happen in a long time. And then I got a text from this woman saying, "Oh, the energy shift, and I can walk." And she hadn't been able to walk really for like years, and that was like really cool.
This is a beautiful work you do.
I love it. There's something so joyful about it and stuff. And when I'm in that right place, it just kind of flows and happens. And obviously, uh, you know, my interactions with JR have meant so much to me through all the years, and knowing that, and it's kind of cool.
I'm curious, you mentioned your dad saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, what is this?" So was he proud of you when you graduated?
he didn't know when I graduated, but the thing that happened was when after he it kind of course, everything lines up. He ended up dating, he was 80 and met this in his early 80s and met this woman and they fell in love. And he really became a much nicer person. And it was interesting. He didn't know about it when I graduated, but some years later, he was so proud of me. He also must have looked me up online because he started to talk to me about near-death experiences. And part of his so he was in his upper 80s at this point, but totally sharp mentally. But he started saying he had a near-death experience that just said he was driving somewhere and he fell asleep and the gravel woke him up. So, but his wanting to connect and love me, you know, kind of transcended his mental process. And so he wanted to connect and try to understand that. But that was a really nice thing that happened. But I just felt it was part of my revealing my life to myself when I wrote my paper. That of course, everything in the world lines up with it perfectly. So that was great. Yeah.
So tell us about your near-death experience.
Okay, so I had been living in Colorado at the time, and so I live in New Jersey now, and where I grew up was kind of near here in about 20 miles north of Manhattan. So I drove back with my friend, my roommate in Colorado was a childhood friend. We came back to visit our parents, and he had a Datsun 280Z, this great fun car to drive. We drove that, and he dropped me off at my parents. We rested a while, and we went to a party, and I drove my mom's Ford Bobcat. Uh, so we were smoking pot and drinking, and but I didn't feel like I was really too high to drive. But again, there was the girl who was having the party. I thought of, oh, I could tell her I'm too drunk to drive and leave my car there so I could go flirt with her the next day. So I had my friend drive me back to my parents' house, but almost all the way there, I remembered my sister needed my mom's car for work the next day. So I had him drive me back. I got the car. I remember walking through the party. It was very crowded, loud music. And I have a little glimpse of walking the pathway out of the house. The next thing I remember, I was out of my body, looking down, and the car was smashed. Apparently, I hit into a tree. And so my body was against the tree with my legs straight out. My head was cracked open. There was a police officer crouching over me. Um, so down there, it was nighttime. Where I was, it was all white. Behind me, there was a circle of a different shade of white. And within there, there was like a full silhouette of a being that just all different shades of white and everything. And I don't know how long it was, but I just remember it more of a feeling part of it, of feeling like everything was good, everything is right. My head being cracked open didn't matter to me, the accident. It was just like knowing everything is good. And after how you know, people say there was no time. That's what it felt like. So I don't know how long it was, but in whatever time it was, the being behind me said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." I knew right in that moment the father was God, not my physical father. And I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. And it was really like a whack in the head to get in my spiritual program because after that, just things kept happening to me. And I got introduced to a Sufi teacher. And as soon as he started to talk to me, he talked to me about how open Mary was to God's love, to, open to the Christ. And I realized that's what I experienced in my near-death experience. And as soon as he said Jesus, that's when I knew Jesus was behind me. And that rings true still to this day. So, and things, I just had a lot of really cool experiences that just kept happening to me. And, possibly I would have just, I got in an accident, I had this cool experience, I got to get back to work and make a living. But uh, all sorts of things had a different idea for me. So one thing is a woman showed up at my door and introduced me to the Sufi teacher. I wasn't looking for that. It, just showed up and I met him and that was the end of it. And, I can look back and see the steps and what happened and meeting these different teachers and how it led me to JR, which is really cool too. So yes, I get to help people, and I talk about those things. I start to feel the energy. So I started doing hands-on healing. And then when my daughter was around 2, her mom went back to work, and I realized I wanted to be home more of the time. So I started working on the phone then, and some on video, and now it's mostly video. But a few years ago, someone said you've forgotten about the healing power of your hands. So after my near-death experience, something that was very clear is if I would touch someone, my hands would become hot, and it helped them. And it's not like I thought healing right away. It just things kept happening to me that like right in my face. You know what I mean? And but my friend said you forgot about the healing power of your hands, and I just started holding my hands up when I work, and that it is. I start to feel the energy in my hands, and I can it's like manipulate the energy around people wherever they are in the world. It's cool. So I love it when I have someone like in a place where it's a different day because I'm also been a sci-fi person since I'm very young. So, time travel and stuff like that.
So for those who are not visually oriented right now, if you look on the gallery, you'll see some hands up. And this is an opportunity, is what I get.
Yeah. Yeah, we can just ask for that light to come in. And, with each and every one of us, there are a lot of beings in spirit. So sometimes people say, are there any angels around? There's always millions of angels around all the time, around everybody. They're just so there. And, you can ask to help and can ask your basic self. The basic self can be a miraculous healer, very majestic healer. That's very cool. Yeah, so for a long time, I would teach the breathing workshops, kind of a way to introduce people to this, but then talking about near-death experiences is a little more direct way to talk about it. So yeah, someone asked me to do a little talk about Ash Wednesday, which just happened. And I've never felt attracted to that, but I was really glad to look at it and see how it was part of it's like that's the beginning of Jesus's sojourn into the desert for him to work on himself for 40 days to get more purely spiritual. And it was just really cool how, I mean, JR definitely lived a life as an example for us, but Jesus did too. And it's really cool to let that in. And, that Jesus had his human parts and he came through being way more spiritual and lived his ministry in the world. And that's what we all do here. So it's great. So yeah, the breathing part can really help letting in the spirit part. So there's a breathing, physical breathing, and then there's kind of spiritual breathing. And that woman, the Hindi teacher, her name was Lotus, she would say the breath, the Holy Spirit is the breath of God, and that's a great way to let that energy in through your breath. There you go. So the energy just moved through my body, which probably means someone just really started to get it, or more than one person, which is cool. So yeah, we do have our basic self, our conscious self, and high self. There are other parts to us, but you can let all those be activated within this. So yeah, one thing I really learned in the DSS is there's our level of responsibility is the same as our level of ability. And so there seems to be people that it just act like they're not part of the healing process. And but we are, and we are, within us is a gift. Within each of us and all of us, there's a gift from God to us, but that's a gift to the world too. So whatever it is that you do in the world can be part of that gift, and it's really good to remember that. And also it's going on for everybody else. So it's kind of like a spiritual party happening. It's great.
What I'm hearing you say a little bit is that I could be receiving a healing, but I could also be participating in some kind of a sharing out that contributes to others' healing.
Yeah, and it is like being one with God, where it's right, yes, and then but that's a mental observation. So it's more like it just is, and it's everywhere all the time, and that's what's so cool. And however whatever can help you do that, that's great, So but remembering that you're part of the gift, that's really important. But also don't let your ego get in the way of letting other people help you. So that's important. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, we'll just ask for the light again. There's some stuff to clear that's needs a little assistance there. So yeah, we can sometimes the colors work good. So the purple light, a lot of times of the traveler really helps. Ah, yeah, one of my big learnings about breathing was I, so I studied massage and I was working on someone and I could just tell they needed to breathe in and out through their mouth. And I said that, and she just started crying and crying and crying. I was like, oh, wow, that was kind of cool. So, so yeah, I mentioned my daughter some. So being a parent is a very spiritual thing, and you know, it it's easy to see what I do as being very spiritual, but anything can be spiritual. Being a parent, I used to be an electrician. I used to be a chef. These are all things that can be that expression. And when they're expressing your qualities and your soul and your basic self and your conscious self work together, it's really magnificent. So yeah, the other part of it is realize there is no way to put it into words, and that the JR, I call it spiritual unknowing. JR called it divine unknowing, but remembering that you don't get to know it really in your mind very much. You can have your mind hold back and hold back and hold back and then get words to it. But if your mind tries to go to it, it kind of goes into closed vision, which is, you know, sympathetic mode again, and as opposed to expanded and parasympathetic mode. Ah,
I've noticed some yawns, and that can be an indicator of the parasympathetic, I believe.
yeah. So that's good. Yeah, if anyone else has any questions, that's good too.
Lawrence, I have one more,
Okay.
and that was so sweet. Thank you for that AMS variation we just shared. Thank,
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Um, you said something that really sparked curiosity on my part. If you could say more regarding the basic self as healer,
Yeah.
could you expand on that just a little bit?
Sure. So the basic self has a lot to do with our unconscious and our physical level. So it can so for me, the part of saying it's a majestic healer really helps a lot because we tend to some people call the basic self the lower self, which again, this is kind of the opposite of that. So it's um, can I say more about it? So there's a part of including your basic self. There's part of it of also reminding your basic self to work in line with the traveler. That's very important because so when you can start to do that, it is kind of like training your basic self to be more spiritual. And you do that through, it is like teaching a kid how to do that by being loving and kind and directive. And at the same time, you're kind of teaching your ego to do that. So those things are working together in line with the highest good. Um, so there's been a couple of times in my life where I've helped people heal, and I kind of realized later it was perhaps too much my ego, and that wasn't the right thing to do for them at the time. So it's um, there is this very majestic vision of what things are like, and a lot, like I said, so for me, a lot of times connecting through my heart is a little bit easier than connecting through the Tisra tail. So when I think of that, that's what I do. And then it is like remembering our experiences up and to the right is more how we perceive ourselves connecting to spirit. And even that's not true because spirit's everywhere. But those are some tools I use to do that and get my basic self there. Just because the basic self can know certain things about the physical level, that's really cool. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I mean what it's done is it's answered it, and it's also whet my appetite
Okay.
to spend more time honoring all of that.
Yeah.
I think what it's done is it's invited me feel like a little tenderness showing up inside. It feels like uh, I'm
So yeah, just be soft in your understanding of it. So you could a little lower than where you're feeling that you can let your energy expand, and that would be more of what I'm talking about. So you just start to do that. Okay, and then just let that go. Let your mind be real relaxed and observe and don't label it too much because that tends to make so the things in the spirit are humongous. The things in our mind are, here. So you want to
thank
let that
you.
happen and just you can do it for yourself. A lot of times when I'm talking to clients, it's just to keep their mind from messing with it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they're
And at the risk of adding more words and getting
yeah.
out of it, I do have a sense with that invitation you just made of allowing more expansion and ease in the way I
Yeah.
relate to majesty or something majestic.
You're doing great right now, so that's good. Your energy's like just so big, and it includes with your basic self. That's really great.
Thank you. That's a real gift. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we've got in the chat ways to contact Dr. Lawrence Brock.
Thank you.
We've got your website. We've got the YouTube link. Is there anything else you'd like me to put in the chat?
If the books are on Amazon, you can just look me up if you're just interested in that. So the L Breathing book, but on my YouTube, everything you can get to through my website. So, but I strongly encourage everyone, if you could commit to a few months of practicing the L breathing. And so I would do it with journal writing, where I journal write about something and then do some breathing, journal write breathing, and it really will change how you breathe. And so Peter's one of the people who, when he said that, I like knew that already, because there's something kind of calm and balanced about him. So that happens from breathing, right? It's great.
What a treat. Anything else you want to share with us?
No, just thank you so much. It's so nice to, interact with such cool people who do such cool things. I mean, we're so blessed to have. I mean, JR is just amazing, and John, but I grew up with JR, so.
Well, thank you so much. We love you. We really, I mean, that just, doing the thing with the hands is
Yeah, it's so
incredible.
cool, right? It's like, it is so cool. Yeah, that I say that because it just blows my mind every time, even all these years later. It's still like, wow, I'm like a little kid. So great.
Well, folks, if you want to come off mute, you can, I think. Yes, I just did something so everybody can come off mute if you
Thank
want.
you again, Lawrence. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Very inspiring. I'm grateful.